Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cocktail Hour Fantasy Football Podcast presented by the Face Off Sports Network. I'm happy to be joining you this Saturday morning talking about Dynasty trade targets. Before I dive into that, I always like to start off with a restaurant or bar tip of the day. This one today is, dear bartender or server, we see you. You don't need to wave your hand up. You don't need to be shaking any money up in the air. You don't need to be yelling across the room. We see you, okay? Trust me. So take that advice into your next restaurant or bar experience. So we'll dive into it today. Dynasty trade targets. I just wanted to start, I'm going to do a couple quarterbacks, running back, a couple wide receivers. So I'm just going to do a quick solo podcast today. But my first trade target of the day is actually Kyler Murray. Now, this is a guy who is, I've seen him ranked anywhere between, I would say, quarterback 10 and quarterback, I would say 9 to 12 in a lot of Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. So I think this is an excellent time to buy low on a guy who's had, it's coming off an ACL injury, obviously concerns about his work ethic and overall play, new coaching staffs too, so tons of negatives. So that has depressed his value, but he was 4th in pass plays per game last year, number 7 in fantasy points per game, number 7 in rush yards per game. So these are a lot of underlying metrics that we like to see, top 5 in fantasy points per game the previous 2 years as well. So while there's concerns about, his limitations on the actual NFL field, the state of the quarterback play in the NFL outside the top 12 quarterbacks, there is always going to be a place in this NFL for the foreseeable future for Kyler Murray. So when he's on the field, I think he's going to have a fantasy impact. It might not be till 2024 that we see that, but we saw even last year, he was very accurate on Player Profiler. He was number 2 in accuracy rating, and they go through and rate every throw. They are fantastic. That is one of my companies. Feel free to check them out as they do some excellent work as well. But like I said, this is a good time to buy him because a first-round pick may just get it done. I would recommend sending, maybe if you were a contenders, particularly in a Superflex league, sending a late first-round pick, maybe a low-end flex option wide receiver, maybe a Quentin Johnston or a Zay Flowers gets it done on top of that late first you're expecting next year. I think his value is very depressed. He's someone I'm very excited about. And, although it may not be this season, as I said, new coaching staff. Jamie, how we doing, my friend? I have Jamie, one of our commenters who always joins me, also has Kyler Murray as a top 10 dynasty quarterback. I have him about 8 or 9, but I think, his value, although I don't have him significantly higher in my rankings than the average consensus, I do think I put more value on those quarterbacks, having a top 12, top 15 quarterback. So good buy low for me. Next up here, this one's not going to be as popular. I have Russell Wilson. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't expect Russell Wilson to get back to the glory days, but a bounce back is certainly in order. Ranked as a low-end quarterback 2 in most sites. I've even seen him outside of the top 25 dynasty quarterbacks on some websites. So this was a guy who was top 10 in fantasy, a top 10 fantasy quarterback for 8 straight seasons. There were some productive games down the stretch last year too. 2 of those games came against my Kansas City Chiefs, though. They have had an up and down defense. They came to play in the playoffs, but Russell Wilson did toast them. JerryJeudy had some very good games down the stretch, and we'll get to talking about him in just a little bit too. But, I just saw a couple trades. I believe I saw him go for 2 second-round picks in this year's draft. I think they were early and a mid, and then I also saw him go for a late, I believe it was the 111 and then the 2.5 as well. And those are fantastic, especially in this class. The talent really dries up after the 1.6 in a Superflex league. I think that is fantastic value for a guy who is certainly going to be a starter for at least the next couple of years, the way that he is being paid. And new offense under Sean Payton, I have to think that Russell Wilson bounces back to, I don't think he's going to be a difference maker in one quarterback leagues anymore, but I think he can be a very productive Superflex quarterback, someone who, if you're a super flex contender who just is a second quarterback away, which is like a lot of teams, I think he is fantastic. I'd be shopping, see what it would take. Would I send Quentin Johnston or Zay Flowers or, Zach Charbonnet for Russell Wilson and maybe a little topper? Absolutely. So explore that. 2024 first time. I don't know if I would send that for Russell Wilson. That's getting a little aggressive, but see what you can do with the picks in this year's draft, or maybe even just a wide receiver 3, Jordan Addison type player. I'd be happy to pay that as well for Russell Wilson. Heading over to the running backs. First guy I have up here, we were burned last season, but I have Antonio Gibson as a bounce back candidate. Now, this isn't somebody who I expect to be a long-term contributor in dynasty leagues, but this is a great option for 2023 if you want to flex, maybe somebody who could sneak into RB2 territory some weeks for the 2023 season. New offense with Eric Bieniemy at the helm. The coaching staff has been hyping him up with the quote, they want to get him more touches. And this is, Matt Kelly, one of the guys I work for, that Player Profiler, the head guy. I don't know. I said one of the guys I work for, the head guy at Player Profiler, the CEO. He's fantastic. And, I was listening to his podcast this week and, he made a great point. Gibson had a fumbling issue at just one point in his career. And, of course, it was Ron Rivera's one of his first year in the league. So he really got the brunt of it, and they took him out, and they did not play him a lot last year. So I don't know why they would do that. He hasn't been somebody who's had fumbling issues throughout his career. So I really do expect Antonio Gibson to bounce back. He's 1 year removed from 2 top 13 running back finishes. He had 58 targets in what was a down year last year. So what do we think if he can get 70 targets or so? This is a guy who certainly could sneak into RB2 territory, where he is ranked outside the top 36 running backs, according to about every single website. So yes, like you were saying in the chat, Jamie, I think sending a 3rd round pick is an excellent idea, and even a better idea, Antonio Gibson, it gets that some people don't really sell a lot for 3rd round picks. They're like, a 3rd round pick, I don't want that. So, if you can't get him in a buy, I would not send a 2nd round pick for Antonio Gibson. But, if you're just exploring another trade with this person, almost anybody of value, you could just ask, hey, I'm an Antonio Gibson away from getting this deal done. And most people, especially if it's anybody really of significant value, they'll be like, okay, you have Antonio Gibson, we'll get this deal done. So, if you're working out a larger deal with somebody, you notice Antonio Gibson on that bench, see if they will just toss him in for free. So yes, this is the part of the show where I'd like to shout out, if you are still listening, if you wouldn't mind giving a like, subscribe, rating, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it helps a lot. I really appreciate it. Next player I have up on my list is JerryJeudy, wide receiver 25 on Fantasy Pros. I just don't get it. This guy, 1st round draft capital, known for his route running and ability to gain separation. Since week 7 of last year, this was the wide receiver 11 in fantasy points per game. He was a top 12 wide receiver the second half of last season. Some outstanding games down the stretch. Like I was saying with Russell Wilson, some of those games, the game against my Kansas City Chiefs where we forgot how to defend, that's okay. I was at that game in Denver last year, and I thought we were going to blow it. We had like a 3-touchdown lead. Denver came back on us at the end, so we ended up pulling it out, though, and we all know the rest. But JerryJeudy is somebody who I really like this season. Prior to last season too, this is a guy who had outproduced Sutton in all but one game they had played together in their career. So I just didn't get the Courtland Sutton hype coming into the year. JerryJeudy was always the better prospect. Courtland Sutton is a little bit more dynamic downfield. However, that JerryJeudy had some outstanding deep plays at Alabama. The drops have always been a little bit of an issue dating back to his time in college, but new Sean Payton offense, I expect him to be the top target. For as far as trade value goes, he could be on a team where the fantasy manager loves him like me. I drafted so much JerryJeudy as when he came out as a rookie, and I still have a lot of those shares. So, you could be talking to if you come up to a manager, he could be a big fan of JerryJeudy, but explore that, especially as we get closer to the season, people don't have a lot of run. People are going to start valuing their starters, and, they're going to start figuring out their lineups. Running backs are going to have a lot more value. Somebody like J.K. Dobbins is somebody who I would be potentially looking to trade for JerryJeudy. If you're needy at running back, maybe not, dip a little bit lower, see what you have to do. But yeah, running backs are going to get a lot more value here, and I'd be exploring sending a low-end RB2 to see if that gets it done for JerryJeudy. I'm going to jump into some comments really quick. Rock Sox wants to tell me somebody who's bounced at Najee Harris. I almost put him. It's got a little bit overblown. He had a nice stretch last year, Najee Harris, especially at the end of the year. He was hurt, exactly. He had that Liz Frank at the beginning of the year. everything you just said, Rock Sox, I agree with. Its efficiency improved in the second half of last season and improved their offensive line. Yeah, I expect not. Yeah, like I said, the hate's gone too far. This guy was a top 5 running back just 2 years ago. I know people hate on him because he's a little bit of an older prospect too, but he didn't make it on today's page. But Najee Harris is. I expect him to have a good year. I don't know how much, but in dynasty leagues, it's a little bit more complicated. I'm just not sure. He's not a guy who I expect to really succeed into that second contract, just being an older guy. So he's only in his 3rd year. So, he's still got plenty of time, but just explore what somebody wants for him. I'm not sending multiple first for him or anything like that. But, if a 2024 first gets it done and you expect yourself to be a contender, I am absolutely willing to send that for Najee Harris. Jamie's plugging in that he's his most owned player on Underdog, drafting him every time in round 11 through 12. I like that a lot too. Roschon Johnson's back there too. I know you're a Roschon Johnson fan, Jamie. Khalil Herbert, I like drafting the running back tandems in Chicago, whichever one I can get a little bit later on, deeper in drafts. Those are some excellent picks. Zach, my friend, what's going on with you as well? So good to have you all in. Thanks for joining me today, guys. With that, I'm going to dive into my next here. The next up wide receiver I have is a trade. This isn't a guy that I even want to recommend as a trade target for you, but it's Kadarius Toney. We're this deep in the offseason, and he clearly has the best talent profile of any wide receiver in the Kansas City Chiefs room. This was a 1st-round pick just 2 years ago, and we've seen it in stretches. We saw it in New York his rookie season, how dynamic he is with the ball in his hands. He's just insane in open space. So Kadarius Toney has struggled, though. Injuries, mental hurdles have kind of stopped him. Obviously, the hamstrings are the most notable one who've kept him out of a lot of games. But, this is a guy who, dating back to his rookie season, was, right after the NFL draft, was missing practice time due to personal reasons. Those are never disclosed exactly. Equipment issues, didn't like the cleats, I believe he was practicing. And so, this is a guy who hasn't, we're questioning them, the want to as well, you might want to say. So, and the other big thing that I didn't like last year was the fact that, he was on the team for 4 months, but he never became a regular part of the offense. He had a low snap percentage throughout the playoffs. They chose to play wide receivers who are a lot less talented than him. And every play that he did get was a designed play, one where it's just exclusively, the ball's not going anywhere else. Patrick Mahomes isn't reading the offense and then picking, Kadarius Toney because he's running around the outs. It's almost a designed play to get him out in open space, and Patrick Mahomes is dumping in the ball. He never became just a fluid part of the offense, like I said. So all those plays were designed. So that makes me think that he didn't get the grasp of the playbook, which I know I've had people tell me the Kansas City Chiefs offense is very complicated. Sure it is, absolutely. But in 4 months, you would expect him to have a little better grasp on it. Now he has a full offseason. I know I told you a lot of negatives. This is a huge, huge opportunity. We've been waiting for Patrick Mahomes to have a connection with a wide receiver besides Tyreek Hill for a long time now. It just hasn't happened. If Kadarius Toney is healthy for all of his games, it's really hard for me to feel like, I've seen, on Fantasy Pros, this was another guy who I think I saw him as a wide receiver 45. He has to way outperform that, in season long rankings, more like probably top 40-ish wide receiver. If he's out there on the field, I know it's hard to expect, but he is going to return on that, So could you get Kadarius Toney for somebody like Marvin Mims, Rashee Rice, Amingo? I would absolutely make that. I just see him as having higher upside. Another guy, if you're working out if you're working out a larger deal, somebody who a manager wouldn't be willing to part with for too much. So Kadarius Toney, I don't love the player, but gosh, I just love the situation. I know we keep saying that for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I'm getting sucked in one more time. So shoot out some offers for him, and like Rock Sox is saying, Mahomes might be the perfect quarterback to keep him motivated. And like in Rock Sox, you were saying, yeah, he's still learning to play. It takes a while for wide receivers to adjust. I understand that. It doesn't usually take that long. So Kadarius Toney, though, I'm not saying it. I've seen it happen before. So he was adjusting last year. I get it. So this is the year, though. We got to give him one more chance, I think. And if he doesn't perform this year, I think we can write him off. But Sky Moore, Rashee Rice are also intriguing as well. Sky Moore also. I'll throw him out there. If people are just writing him off as dead, and you can get him for third-round pick next year, especially if you're a contender, throw it out there. I mean, Sky, he has also a chance to get on the field. I mean, the Chiefs have to hit on one of these second wide receivers eventually. My goodness, it's been a rough stretch for them. So with that, I'm going to finish up here talking about a couple of my favorite tight ends. So first off, Tre McBride. This was the first tight end selected in the 2022 NFL Draft, second round to the Arizona Cardinals. Great athlete. We saw that at the NFL Combine. And he took on, although he played very sparingly when Zach Ertz was around last year, he took on a very large role once he went down with that ACL injury. Over 70% route run percentage his last 4 games, over 73% snap percentage since week 10. So had a big role in that offense, even when it was just third string quarterbacks, even when Kyler Murray and Colt McCoy were out. So Zach Ertz is also entering his mid-30s, coming off an ACL injury. I know we don't love the offense probably without Kyler Murray, but Tre McBride, I just see probably getting that first crack at it. We'll see what we get from Zach Ertz. People don't usually return strong their first year from an ACL injury, and Zach Ertz being in his mid-30s, I think this could end up being Tre McBride's team. And, another player, this is a guy who could be tough to get in a standalone deal. Is anybody going to sell him for a third-round pick? Maybe not. Are you going to buy him for a second-round pick? You don't want to send a second-round pick for Tre McBride. So this is another guy, if you happen to see him on the bench when you're working out a deal, see, hey, I'll take Tre McBride. That's one of my favorite ways to get value. See if they'll throw in a third-round pick. See if you see, just a sleeper on their bench, you're working out a big deal. They're inconsequential in the deal anyway. That's a great way to pick up some of your favorite sleepers. So Tre McBride, could be the number one tight end for the Arizona Cardinals this year and could have some back end value when we see Kyler Murray hopefully returning to form from that ACL injury. And last up here, I am going to finish off with Jake Ferguson. And I'm only throwing him out there to remind people that he is still probably the top pass target at tight end. Luke Schumacher is a run blocking tight end, and so I just don't expect him to have a really much of an all passing role, especially during his first year in the league. So this is a guy, unremarkable athlete, 4th-round pick in 2022, solid but unspectacular production in college. His highest receiving season was actually his freshman season. He was productive all the way through. So, that's something to be said for that. But who does this remind us of? It kind of reminds us of Dalton Schultz. It's a pretty similar profile. So Dak Prescott has elevated a player like this before. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks are the clear top targets in the offense. But after that, if you're looking for some spike weeks, some best ball spike weeks, maybe somebody is somebody you throw in there during some tough tight end weeks, maybe you could catch a touchdown pass. Yeah, I think Jake Ferguson is still a solid bit. And I think he's dropped significantly in value since the Luke Schumacher pick. So, that doesn't really change anything for me. So if that makes him a nice little buy candidate, I think somebody who you could send a fourth, I don't know if a 4th-round pick gets it done in the future, but, you could pick somebody that you drafted in the 3rd or 4th round this year who's an extreme long shot, and you might be able to get it done for Ferguson. So those are some of my, Rock Sox disagrees with me. He said, I'm fading Jake Emerson. Schumacher has serious good draft capital. They didn't draft him in the 2nd round just to block. I agree with that. I agree. I think they do have more, that's kind of the profile. I think they probably at least think that they can get him to do more. We see these NFL teams, though, that there's a barren wasteland of 2nd and 3rd and 4th round tight ends drafted the last 5 or 6 years. They just, some of them just fall off the face of the earth. The tight end, it's so hard to be a fantasy impact. That's why I'm just saying pick whoever you get at the end of the draft is the best value, because my goodness, the tight end position is just such a wasteland. I never like to waste a premium pick on them. I'll acquire guys like Gerald Everett and Hayden Hurst and Tyler Higbee. Those are all great candidates this year. Guys almost worth nothing. My dogs are getting restless, when I do these podcasts, for any more than 20 minutes, my goodness. But, those are all guys who are worth like nothing in drafts, and you can get in, and I expect them to have a good year this year, a bounce back season. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I just like to keep these solo podcasts short and sweet. Rock Sox, Jamie, my guys, Zach, you guys always are joining me, so I appreciate that. Like I said, if you wouldn't mind getting a like, subscribe, rating, wherever you may be listening to the cocktail hour. It is much appreciated. You all enjoy your weekend. I'm going to take a few days off. I'm headed down to Southern Colorado to do some ATVing, but I will be back, I think, Wednesday night with a show for sure. So have a good few days, guys. I'll see you soon. All right.